Hey guys, welcome to Black, White, and the Grays. My name is Kylie Gray and you are on our farm here in Central Oregon. We are a garden zone 3 with a frost risk year round. So you look us up on the Farmer's Almanac when our last frost date and it'll say NA, not applicable. We are a sub-Arctic zone and I know, Oregon, you really don't put sub-Arctic with Oregon in the same sentence, no, typically, but that's where we are. We're in the Arctic of Oregon. It is very cold here. We have a very short season of growing. And in fact, I have been told so many times that I can't grow, or very discouragement in the aisles of local grocery stores or picking up seeds, or local farm stores picking up plants, and the discouragement is in our community. But there is a whole group of people that are growing here and being very successful, and I am being one of them. So I share on this YouTube channel about kind of how I grow in my thing. We are homesteaders, we're gardeners, we are, yeah, that's who we are. But Jess adds to us to collab and have creators collab with her on videos showing basically the books that we learned to homestead and garden with, or to cook with, or anything with. And so I'm going to show you some of my staples. I had a rule when I was first starting out, because when you first start gardening and when you first start homesteading, there's so much information out there. There's a lot of people with very strong opinions when it comes to gardening or homesteading or cooking, actually, even. And so sometimes you have to really just figure out what works for you. And sometimes, even where we live in our microclimate, what works for me here on my farm might not work for you 20 miles away in the same town, but very different microclimate. So Jess called us creators to come together, put up how we learned how to homestead, or books that helped us learn how to homestead, and to put them all on a playlist. And she's going to make the playlist. It'll have a whole bunch of people's recommendations, creators' recommendations. So here's my story. I moved a lot. I'm an Oregonian, born here in Oregon, but I moved a lot. I met my husband out in West Virginia, then moved back to Oregon, and yada yada, got married out here, moved back to West Virginia again, and my husband and I were there for 3 years. In that time, I really got into cooking, preserving my food. I had my first very own garden. It was a 10 by 10 garden space. It was tilled. I do a no-dig gardening now, which you will see referenced in some of these books that I show you, and I learned to cook there. I watched The Pioneer Woman, which actually I don't have any of her cookbooks, but I learned how to use cast iron. I learned how to preserve my food. We were in a rental home, not much land, but enough land to have a garden, out in the country a bit. That's where I learned a lot of my skills. Fast forward to moving to Oregon, we bought a fixer-upper foreclosure on little less than 5 acres here in the Cascade Mountains, and we put a lot of effort into making that. Then we adopted all 3 of our boys at once out of the foster care system here in Oregon. We waited a whole year and got our first chickens. And my husband built me for that Mother's Day a couple raised beds by our house. When we started, there's so many resources. So I had a rule for myself. I would go to the library, and if I checked it out 3 times consecutively, I would just grab all the gardening books, all the homesteading books, and if I would check them out 3 consecutive times, that means I needed to buy them. So that was the rule I had for myself. That way you weren't going to, you go to the store or go on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, or even sometimes Costco has a lot of gardening books and gardening books, and it's overwhelming and you don't know what methods you're gonna love and what methods work for you. And the books that I recommend for you might not be the methods that you want to choose, but I will tell you. Okay, for homesteading, this is the first book that I bought. And I checked it out of the library a bazillion times. It's the Backyard Homestead Guide to Raising Farm Animals. Good grief. Okay, along with that, I'm trying to balance all these books, so I don't have to, yeah, okay. Is Shay Elliott's book, Welcome to the Farm. This was also, I checked it out. I think I actually requested our library to buy this book. Yeah, I loved it so much, bought it. And so these 2 books really kicked off my homesteading. As far as with that being said, at that point I had found Justin Rhodes. He was doing the Great American Farm Tour at that point, which is how I found Shay Elliott. So they went over to the Elliott homestead, they did a descent there. And the Elliott homestead is going to definitely pop. These chickens are sneaking in my garden while I'm yakking at you guys. These 2 homestead books really are just really valuable. I don't know if you have seen them. They're in the background over here. They're my dairy cows. We have 3, well, ish. We have 1 dairy cow in milk. We have a heifer who is about to give birth on the 22nd of October, which today is the 12th. And, well, heifers can go 2 weeks earlier, 2 weeks late. So 3 girls we have. And the biggest helping book for having these cows is this book. It's Keeping a Family Cow. I have read this. It is such a book, whether you agree with some of her techniques or not, it's worth a read. It is amazing. We live in an area where there is no vets for bovine within, I don't know, you'd have to go to Bend, which is quite the drive. You'd have to trailer in as well. There are mobile vets, but even that, they do a very large area. So you really want to know. Fortunately for us, we have friends that's an old cowboy, and he knows a lot of stuff about ranching cattle, and it overlaps with dairy cattle. Like when we had to pull out our stillborn calf on our first go around. Yeah. Anyway, this book, when we had a calf that we brought in that we grafted onto our milk cow because of the stillborn calf, it had scours because her milk was super rich. And this teaches you how to deal with it all from home, teaches you how to deal with mastitis. We've dealt with that. Teaches you to do milk fever. And a lot of it is you get to do it on your own. I've seen a lot of books, those are my crazy geese, that'll just be like, call a vet. I get that. But at the same time, sometimes a homesteader's got to do what a homesteader's got to do. And if you don't have access to the internet and you need a book to save you, you don't have access to a vet. You know? That's, I think, all the homestead books I have. Oh, but I have Jess's homestead book as well. Jess hadn't written her book when I was needing homesteading materials. So, for gardening. Now, because we live in a cold climate and because our season is so short, I want to preface this for all cold climate gardening. You can take anybody's gardening knowledge, which I used. I learned a ton of gardening information from her, and she wrote her garden book a couple years ago, and this is a great resource, and it's the first time gardeners growing vegetables. This is a must-have. This was in Costco, which is where I got my copy. It is wonderful, but I didn't have this book. I just watched every single one of her YouTube videos back in the day and still do. I didn't start with this book, but I started with Jess on YouTube, so I'm including this book because it is a valuable resource. This is a local gardening book. If you live in a cold climate, this is from our area here in Lapine, Oregon, but this is by an author, Linda Stevenson. Cold Climate Gardening, the Hardiest of the Hardy, Plants and Trees, Shrubs for Central Oregon Gardens. It goes into cold climate gardening. So one thing where Linda wasn't quite, she goes into it. She talks about gardening and vegetables and all of that. But and this was, guys, I love that it's a spiral. But if you come into here, I am like highlighting, I am writing notes in the margin. She does such a good job. This teaches you what you can grow, what time of year you can grow. Now you can get creative. I spoke to her personally and asked her a bunch of questions because I was so new to gardening that I was like, hey, Linda. At this time she had a local nursery, and I was able to talk to her and say, hey, Linda, this says I can grow carrots, but you just say Danvers is the option. Can I grow these purple carrots or whatever? And she's like, I've never tried to grow anything but what I've listed, but you should try it. And I did. And obviously if you can grow carrots, you can grow all the varieties, but I had no idea. I was like, that was like 6 years ago now. So since then I have come a long way. And because of Jess, I found Charles. Now Charles, yeah, these 3 books, in my opinion, for our zone, and this for anybody's climate, these 2, Charles and Jess, I don't think you need any other books. You can either one of these books, you can grow a garden. This one teaches you how to do it in a cold climate, because if you go off what Jess or Charles grows in my climate, you will fail miserably if you're growing what they're growing at the same time of year as them. Does that make sense? So you will fail miserably. Tomatoes are going to freeze out here. Squash is going to freeze out here. Cucumbers are going to freeze out here unless you have protection, which I learned the hard way with my raised beds by my house. They freeze. They can come up. I had a tomato that just kept coming back, and every time it came back, she froze again. But if you learn how to grow in a cold climate, and you learn the love of gardening and the joy of gardening and how the Lord delights in you in the garden, that's why I love Jess, and that's why I highly recommend her. She is a Christian. I am a Christian. She just resonates, and she has the joy of the Lord, and it comes through in all aspects of her gardening and her life. So, but Charles does it in such a way that simplifies it, that teaches you. He loves the garden, but he's an amazing teacher, and he has a YouTube channel as well, and he will get, the last time, he gets back to every single person in his comments as far as I can see. If you have a gardening question, he is responding to you in the comments. And I just think that's amazing. He is from the UK, so it's a very different zone from where we are. But these are the best books I could highly recommend, because you need to learn how to grow. You need, in the cold season, you need the joy of the Lord in the garden, and just valuable knowledge. And once I was able to figure out, oh, I might need to be growing cold hardy crops throughout the summer, and so what Jess is growing for her fall and spring garden is what I should be growing all season. Clicked. I was like, I got this. And then I was able to come out here and pour my heart and soul into this garden. And so yeah, it kicked off a whole thing. It's a whole chain of events. And here I'm blabbering, but once I started my garden, I had 2 neighbors that started their garden. My cousin, my other cousin, our family friends, my mom, my sister, my best friend over in Sisters, Oregon. I've had old friends and family friends from West Virginia call me and ask how to start a garden, and I have hours of conversations over the phone on how to start gardens over there. When I'm inspired by one person on YouTube, and then I start my garden, and it doesn't even count the people who's been touched by me on this channel. Like this, when you start a garden, when you're successful, and when you homestead, yeah, it's amazing. People, it's a massive chain reaction that started from me finding Justin Rhodes on the American Farm Tour, to finding Shay Elliott, to finding a few other people, which I'll talk about with the cooking thing, being recommended Jess's channel, and it just kind of exploding from there. A little bit of knowledge, but if one day we don't have access to YouTube where you can find all these lovely creators that are full of knowledge, and there's thousands of more I could talk to you about right now, but I'm trying to keep it concise. There's just so much valuable information, but these are my must-have in my hand. So we're going to transition over to cooking. Like I said, I found Shay Elliott. I loved the Welcome to the Farm book. She also has recipes in there. She has a few other books that I also have that have good recipes in them. She has a blog with amazing recipes in them. But I, for several years, was one of the first people in her cooking community. And I have 2 of these just stashed full. And her cooking community, she has a billion recipes. They're very whole foody, very delicious. Great recipes, great resource. Shay Elliott, everything great. How I first learned to cook, though, we're going old school. Better Homes and Gardens new cookbook. This, or any of the Better Homes and Gardens, these old ones that have the gingham on the covers. This one, I think I just got it at a garage sale. If you can find the old ones, these are classics. I learned when I was a little girl, I just remember making pie crust recipes out of here and doing all my experiments that weren't very good back in the day. But this is definitely a valuable resource. It just teaches you basics, and it's a good classic, and it's adorable. Let's modern it up. Okay, literally. These 2 ladies. One, Mary. This gal I also found from Justin Rhodes's, which Justin Rhodes in himself is a great resource. I've learned so many homesteading things from him. He does have a book as well, but he is a fountain of knowledge for homestead information, for chicken butchering. Main thing, I have learned a lot from him. We just processed, we had 4 families go in on about 100 birds, which when it came down to it, we didn't have quite 100. Processed them this last weekend. Major milestone in my homesteading endeavors, like processing meat chickens. It's like full circle. Started with Justin Rhodes, now I'm doing it myself, and here we are. We're about to process our pigs this fall, which isn't our first. We've had a butcher process one of our hogs, but this is the first time we're doing it ourselves. A massive, oh, we're going to interject this. I don't think he has a book, but Brandon, the Farmstead Meat Smith, he's on YouTube. He has a class. If you can print out, we have all of his information printed out. He is a massive resource when it comes to butchering. Just chef's kiss. That man knows what he's talking about, and he is a wonderful resource for butchering. And we followed between him, Joel Salatin. Don't even have time to go have all. He has a bazillion books. He does a great. I took his class in person at the Modern Homesteaders event. That is why we got motivated enough to get our own meat chickens. And yeah, those are really good, valuable resources. But I found Jill Winger from also Justin Rhodes from when he did the Great American Farm Tour. That was such a valuable resource. Go back and watch those videos. This is a great cookbook. This is the simple recipes for heritage cooking in any kitchen. This lady, she can cook and she can teach you how to cook. Last cookbook. And then I have a herb book. This is by my friend Mary. I know Mary, and I met her at the Modern Homesteading event up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. She is the sweetest lady, and she also has a YouTube channel. I think most of everybody I mentioned has a YouTube channel. Well, not everybody, but this gal has a YouTube channel and a blog. She's a valuable resource. The sweetest lady you'll ever meet. How she is on YouTube is she's nicer in person, if you can believe that or not. So I highly recommend this gal. She has, I have some kittens running behind the camera, all sorts of recipes. This is a fairly new book. It just came out in August. Great resource. And the final book, there's some of my cowgirls right there. I have been talking a bit about this on my channel, and it is about herbalism. I don't talk too much about it because I'm learning myself, but I share knowledge, especially with herbs that we can grow in our climate. But this is an amazing resource, and it is the Encyclopedia of Herbal Medicine. I guarantee you're going to see this on several videos. And this is just wonderful. Shows you pictures, not of every plant, but of, well, it does. I think it shows you a lot of plants. Pictures, what it does, what it's for, what you can use it, what parts. This is just, you can definitely go more in depth than this, but this is a great starter. I got pitch on my books. This is a great starter for herbal medicine. So anyway, there you go. This video, I wanted it to be like 10 minutes. It's not, but it's okay, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys are finding this whole collaboration extremely helpful and extremely knowledgeable, and that you'll pick up some of these books. If not, you could do what I did. Go to the library. If you check out a bunch of these books, see what works for you and see what works for your brain. I know with my brain, it was like some people's knowledge of gardening or cooking or herbal medicine was so above my pay grade that it just did not make sense, and it was overwhelming. Find simple resources, or if your brain works more scientific, find those that work for your brain. It's super customizable. This is what works for me. I prefer simple, tasty meals, simple animal husbandry, simple homesteading, simple garden techniques. That's how I learn, is simple and very visual. So I love good, solid books to learn from. And these are mine. Put down in my comments what ours has been beneficial and helpful to you guys. And I will see you hopefully on my next video. Bye guys.